Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Lil Spooky. This is the show where we talk about things that spook us just a little bit, like UFOs, aliens, urban legends, conspiracy theories, and that weird-ass dream I had last night where all of my teeth exploded out of my mouth one by one. My name is Colleen.
My name Everett. We talked about dreams in a previous episode, like one of our first earlier episodes. And I think teeth falling out means you're like afraid of your appearance or how people perceive you. So what does it mean that your teeth exploded? I
don't know. I Googled it. Could not. Everything about teeth just says stress and like for real.
It's just
we talked about spontaneous combustion last week, and like I said, I'm in danger.
So this is just super stress. Your teeth aren't falling out. They're literally exploding.
Yeah. It was to the point where like I could hear it like before it would happen because they exploded one by one, and I woke up and my jaw just hurt so bad.
Do you recall in your dream, like, did it hurt? Or, like, was your mouth open? Like, could you see it happening in a mirror or something?
I vividly remember this dream because it would happen one tooth at a time and once every 10 minutes. And before each tooth exploded, I could feel my teeth moving in my mouth. And then there'd be like a psh. And I remember going up to my mom in the dream and being like, "Mom, my teeth are exploding." And she was like, "It happens to all of us."
It's part of becoming a woman.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, God. Anyways, that was an unpleasant dream. One of many teeth falling out dreams I've had.
That's not just teeth falling out. That's teeth going.
Yes, I'm like it
ham.
was like shrapnel. It was weird, very odd.
Enough dream analysis because we're getting into it this week.
What do you tell us what we're talking about?
So, by very popular request, we've had a lot of people request this topic. We're going to finally talk about Skinwalker Ranch. This is something I have been working on for a very long time because there is a lot to cover. So much so that this is actually going to be our first series. We're going to do 2 episodes on this topic.
Limited series. We available only on NerdSloth.
Yeah, and we can't cover it all in an hour, or roughly an hour. So that's why we got to do it longer. This story's nuts, first of all.
So I'm aware of Skinwalker Ranch. I have a very vague knowledge of it. I know that it contains all of my favorite spooky things, paranormal stuff, monster stuff.
How you introduced the show at the top, it's basically all of it.
Yeah, but I don't know the story, so this is going to be new to me, newish, on the edge of new, adjacent.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay.
So I'm going to just say almost all of the information, at least in this first episode, is going to be sourced from the book Hunt for the Skinwalker. And that's written by Dr. Colm Kelleher and George Knapp. These 2 individuals were part of an actual team that investigated the ranch in 1996. This first episode is going to be the events leading up to 1996. And they cover that in the book too, of course. But it's about the family that owned the ranch from 1994 to 1996. And I'm honestly at a loss for words because there's so much that happens in just 2 years. And I will say the authors of the book call them the Gorman family. That's not their real name. They're a type of family, like they're cattle ranchers, and they want their privacy.
Sure. That's fair.
I will say, though, their names are public record. Very easy to figure out who they are.
Sure.
But just for the sake of respect, we'll go with what they said, and we'll call them the Gormans.
And question, you'll probably answer this later on, but are they still living on the ranch?
No.
Okay.
They and I'll get to this later too, but they end up leaving in 1996, which is why this investigation comes in.
Okay. Lay it on me.
So let's talk about skinwalkers first.
Okay.
Because that's kind of the crux, at least in part. What is a skinwalker, Colleen?
Oh, gosh, I know I'm going to answer this wrong. Is this like a person who can transform into an animal of some kind?
Yeah.
It's like a Native American legend, right?
Yes.
I don't know of which tribe. But.
Right. So you got pretty much everything. So what it is an entity of absolute pure evil.
Oh, it's evil?
Yes.
Okay.
They're Native American medicine men that have gone bad. They use their magic and rituals to either cause harm to others or for selfish gain. If they do that too much, and there's different variations in different tribes of how this process works. Sometimes if you murder, you just become a skinwalker. If you do too many curses or just selfish magic, you'll eventually be cursed and become a skinwalker. Regardless, once you're a skinwalker,
kind of Wendigo adjacent.
Kind of. And the Wendigo is northeast tribes and nations. This is a southwest thing. Sure.
I'm sure they're very different.
Mythologies. Different origins too, where like Wendigo is cannibalism, but this is more so an anti-murder adjacent thing, which kind of the same. But regardless, they are witches. They're still people.
Oh, okay.
But not. So what that means is they are able to transform into pretty much whatever they want, but it's usually some sort of animal. And it's usually a local type animal. It is said by some of the tribes that discuss the skinwalker that the final transition needed from human to skinwalker requires them to murder someone close to them, usually a sibling or a loved one.
Okay.
Skinwalkers have many supernatural abilities. Most noticeably, they're the masters of stealth. So as we said, they can transform at will into many different animals, whether it be a wolf, eagle, cat, bat, or any other animal that lives around the area. They do take on the abilities of any animal they change into, but they become exponentially more powerful. So if a skinwalker takes the form of an owl, they will have the same heightened senses of night vision and speed, but way faster and can see way farther. That type of thing.
All right, badass.
A skinwalker's not immortal, but they're extremely resilient to the elements and have even found to be bulletproof in some instances.
Huh.
On top of this, skinwalkers are able to blend into a community. They change their form and conduct their evil magic at night, but by day they typically maintain a human appearance and live a solitary life. Some tribes believe that the only true way to kill a skinwalker is to discover its true identity.
True identity meaning like its human identity?
Right. Yeah. So is it Uncle Bill? He's a skinwalker.
It's interesting how every culture has some sort of similar witch type legend of like the isolated person who's by themselves, but also pure evil.
And it's so weird that there were actual witch hunts, but a skinwalker version that happened in the 1800s. But I totally skipped over that story just because
there's too much to talk about.
So there are many different variations of skinwalker legends throughout the American Southwest, but what is most familiar with the general public is the legend that the Navajo tell. And I will say at the top here too, their true name is the Dene or the Dene, but just for the sake of consistency, I'm just going to say Navajo the whole time.
Okay.
What this version is basically what we've already talked about, except, and this is kind of the same thing among a lot of tribes, but especially with the Navajo, it's a very taboo subject.
Skinwalkers?
Yes, they do not like talking about skinwalkers, especially to outsiders, but even among themselves, they do not discuss this.
Even today?
Even today.
Interesting.
The reason for this is most Native Americans do believe that a skinwalker is and should remain an issue among their own people. And if you do talk about it among your own people, you may become a target of a skinwalker. So it's just something you do not discuss at all.
Sure.
Unless you're talking one-on-one with someone and you're certain they're like your spouse or something, and there's no way they could be a skinwalker.
Right. Oh, I suppose because they live among you. How would you know if you're talking to one or not?
Right. Could be your neighbor.
Got you.
Whoever. So let's get to the ranch now that we have a basic understanding of what a skinwalker is. Skinwalker Ranch is located in the middle of the Uinta Basin, which resides in northeastern Utah. It's only about 150 miles from Salt Lake City. This area has been inhabited by various Native American tribes for about 12,000 years. But since the 1800s, it has been home to the Utes after they were forced there from Mormon settlers. Their reserved land grew smaller and smaller over the decades after it was found that much of this area is very rich in mineable resources. Today, the land that is not settled is mostly dense forest and steep ridges, but Skinwalker Ranch itself is about 480 acres of land in this area.
All right.
Very large.
Mm-hmm.
There is only one entrance and exit to the homestead of the ranch. The land nearest to the residence is flat land for grazing livestock, but on the northern border of the property is a 200-foot high ridge of red rock. And after rainfall, the canal at the bottom of the ridge becomes very muddy and nearly impassable, whether it be foot traffic or vehicles.
Okay.
To the south, directly south of this canal, is a mud track that runs from east to west along the entire property. This is also very difficult to travel after just a slight rainfall, especially by vehicle. And then the rest of the acreage of the ranch is thick forest, cliffs, ridges, and creeks.
And like, where's the buildings located?
They didn't include an actual map anywhere I could find because I think they are trying to keep people from actually visiting the area.
Okay.
But from what I could gather, I think it's kind of near the southern boundary. Like if I were to imagine this is just a perfect square, I think it's close to the central bottom.
Okay.
So in 1994, the Gorman family purchased this property in order to raise their cattle in privacy. They were sick of the gossip and neighborly intrusions that came from their previous hometown, so they moved from New Mexico to Utah.
I feel like that's not making it any better.
What do you mean?
Moving from New Mexico to Utah is not going to change your like small town gossip problem.
Well, I think it is though, because this ranch is far away from their
it
nearest
is
neighbor.
Very isolated.
And it's 480 acres too. Like you can't really get more private than that.
Yeah.
So when they first visited the property before purchasing it, they noticed that every door of the home was outfitted with several heavy-duty locks and deadbolts on both the inside and the outside of each door.
What? But there's only one way to get in and out of this property?
The ranch itself. Like there's one like long like driveway, I guess you could say.
Right. But I mean, it's like you'd see anyone coming because there's only one way to get in.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Gormans thought this amount of security was definitely overkill, but after further being reminded of the previous owner's paranoia, they just were, put it in the back of their minds.
So it was well known that the previous owners
they had been told that, I assume, by like the realtor or whoever they were looking at this with. But when they were getting ready to sign the papers to purchase this property, they noticed one more additional detail that was really weird to them. Anyone that purchases the property has to agree that before they decide to dig anywhere on the property, they do have to contact the previous owner and get their express permission to do so.
What? On your own property? I mean, I get like contacting the city to make sure there's no like lines underneath or something.
I mean, I don't know how that could be enforced and how the previous owner would know whether they dig or not.
Yeah.
But regardless, that was part of the written agreement that they had to sign before purchasing the home.
No way would I sign that. That's creepy.
Well, after being weirded out by that information and all of the weird security on the house, they're like, other than that, this home and this property is perfect for what we want.
Other than the glaring red flags.
Well, yes, but they're a cattle family. Like they raise prize, like Angus cows and stuff. And this is a large property, which I imagine was pretty cheap too, based on the terrain that's not the immediate ranch next to the home.
Got it.
So they did it anyway. They bought it.
All right. I mean, to each his own.
They moved in very shortly after purchasing, and it did not take long for weird events to happen. The Gorman couple, they're called Tom and Ellen.
Okay.
Not the real names,
but
Tom and Ellen. They were walking around in the evening near their truck. Their children were there as well in the flatbed of the truck.
Okay, so they're like hanging out in the back.
Yeah, just
doing
in the
fun
back
kid stuff.
Yeah, just watching and looking at the property because there's a lot to see.
Sure.
Then they saw what looked like a gray wolf about 300 yards in the distance, trotting towards the family.
Okay. Not too weird on a ranch in New Mexico. Utah.
Utah.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, it's just like a wolf. It's like, I mean, that would be a little scary, but it's not like charging at them.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, odd that it would not be running away from them. I imagine wolves are fairly skittish.
And they have protection, too. I mean,
they've got guns and stuff with them. Sure.
Things. Yeah.
Sure.
It keeps coming towards them, and then about 50 yards away, it stops. And from this distance, they realize exactly how large this animal was. They believed it to be at least 3 times the size of a normal wolf.
Wow.
They noted that the animal seemed like it was trained, like it was someone's pet. It watched the family for a moment, And when the family made no moves, it started again trotting towards them. Ed just unloaded several of his Black Angus cows into a fenced area near them, and a curious calf stuck its head through the fence to observe whatever this thing was.
Sure.
The beast stopped again about 10 feet from the family. It smelled like terrible wet dog, and it was as tall as Ed's chest.
Yikes.
The wolf was muscular, extremely so, like you could see definition in the muscles, and had very bright blue eyes.
It's like the Beast of Bray Road.
Kind of, yeah. But the difference is it exuded a sense of calm. They felt calmed by this thing when they should be nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be freaked.
They were nervous at first, but when it got close to them, they just like, oh, this is just normal. Like, this is someone's pet. So they let their guard down. They're like, oh, let's keep it as a pet ourselves or something.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
And then when the beast knew that they were fine with this, with unordinary speed, the wolf darted towards the calf and wrapped its jaws around the head.
Okay, so what a wolf does. Eat
True,
cow.
Yes. It tried to drag the calf through the fence, and then Ed and his son, Tom, kicked the wolf as hard as they could, and Ed swung a baseball bat that he had in his truck. It didn't even flinch at these strikes and refused to let go of the prey. Ed's other son, Tad, that's what the name that was given to this boy. Very odd. But Tad went into the truck and grabbed a revolver that was in the truck.
Okay.
Ed took the revolver and shot the wolf 3 times. It did not bleed. It did not flinch. It seemed to be bulletproof.
Like the bullets ricocheted off of it, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And didn't even leave a mark of any kind.
Okay.
It didn't show any signs of pain or discomfort. And then after shooting again, it reluctantly let go. The wolf stood 10 feet away from Ed, just staring at him. Ed shot one more time, aiming for the heart, and again the shot left no sign of entry, but the wolf backed away this time about 30 feet. Ed told Tad to grab a hunting rifle from the home, and once he brought it to Ed, he immediately took aim and shot the wolf again in the chest. It recoiled, but still showed no signs of pain. This is a much more powerful gun than the Magnum.
Yeah.
He shot one more time, aiming at the chest again. This time, the bullet went through the wolf and a chunk of flesh came out of its back. The wolf made no sounds and stared again at the family for a moment. Then it slowly turned and trotted away. Ed and Tom went to track the wolf, since its large and deep prints were visible in the mud.
Okay.
The tracks disappeared after a point in the woods near a river. They had no idea where it went or how it disappeared. And this is only, I think, a couple nights after moving in.
And basically the entire family saw this go down.
Yeah, the entire family saw
this. And it
this.
wasn't, I mean, was there like bullets as evidence, or is this just a story told?
Okay, so I will say for this first episode, this is all based on their word. There is going to be evidence of the investigation that happens later, but for these first 2 years, we're just taking it at face value.
Yeah. There had to have been something mysterious about that wolf. If it was 3 times the size of a normal wolf, and they were like, this is fine. I mean, we have deer in our yard that I know are not going to hurt me, and they like walk up to me, and I'm not letting them get close to me. I don't want any of their rabies. Well, you're talking about a giant ass wolf around your kids?
And not just a regular wolf, 3 times the size of a wolf that's up to your chest, like bigger than a dire wolf.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I mean, that in itself is odd, but the whole like being shot multiple times and not dying thing is also probably
and not
up
even
there.
Being affected by it until like a 10th shot later.
Interesting.
But this is not the last they see of this wolf.
Okay.
In the following days, the family inquired around the town about wolves in the area. Like, what's going on? We saw a huge wolf. Like, they're not keeping this a secret because it scared them, obviously.
Sure.
One person told them that the ranch was home to a pack of wolves, which did actually relieve them because they realized this wasn't a group like hallucination. Or anything.
Right. And that, I mean, that would be a relief to some extent. Right. I'd be like, hey, you got any advice on how to kill an unkillable wolf?
So a couple more weeks pass, and then Ellen was arriving home from a trip to town. She opened the gate to the property and got back into the car to drive back to the home. Then, when she was getting back into the car, she saw the wolf again. It was right outside the car window, and it was so large that she could not even see the top portion of the wolf while it was on all fours.
Next. What? I'm sorry. Is this still the truck? Like a pickup truck?
No, I think this is just a car, like a sedan.
Okay.
4-door. So, I mean, if it was up to his chest before, I mean, it's probably a little car, but that's huge still. And like it's towering above her so much so she can't even see everything.
Yeah, I don't like that.
So she obviously freaks out, but she notices something else now too. Beyond the wolf, she saw another creature in the distance. This one seemed to be a lot smaller. It was all black, but resembled something closer to an actual dog, except the head of the dog was much too big in proportion to the body.
Okay.
So I'm just imagining like a dog with like a cartoon sized, like just giant bobblehead, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a skinwalker, that wouldn't be my first choice in terms of intimidating creatures, but like whatevs.
So she just slams on the pedal.
Yes,
goes home.
See, she's smart.
The two creatures did not follow. They just stood on all fours, I guess, in place and just watched.
Okay.
The next day, she went to the tribal office in town to see if any people on the reservation had pet wolves. The Ute Native Americans were bewildered when she asked this and said that wolves were not native to the area and the last known wolf had been shot in 1929.
Wait, now what kind of jokers were telling them there was a pack on their property?
That's what I was thinking too. So someone's messing with them. I don't know. Or they just don't know what they're talking about.
Now, if I was like a member of that tribe and some like clueless newcomer came and asked me, and it would be really fun to pretend I had no idea what they were talking about. Margaret? She's been dead for 30 years. But okay, so there is something fucky happening regardless.
Absolutely. But it's not just skinwalkers. There's other stuff going on. So winter was approaching of 1994, and Ellen decided to take a walk on their property on one of the last mild days of the season. Several times during her walk, she would feel and hear a large bird-like object dart past her ear and then back into the woods. It moved too fast for her to see what it was, and it would fly just a few feet from the side of her head, just missing her. She had no idea what that was, and around the same time, weird things were happening inside the home. Tools and other belongings of the family would regularly go missing. Ed could not locate the post digger that he had placed outside the home, and he would find it months later up a tree and propped in the branches. This tool weighed over 60 pounds, so no family member or any stranger would have gone through the effort to prank them by climbing a tree with lugging around this 60-pound tool and just putting it up there.
Side note, that reminds me of when my dad came to visit and we were all sitting underneath. We have a lilac bush, like a big one in our front yard, and there's a porch swing under it. And we're all sitting there and my dad looks up and he goes, what's that? And he stands up and he pulls like a 7-foot scythe out of the lilac bush. We had no idea it was there.
It just blended in perfectly.
Could have fallen and murdered us at any moment.
The Grim Reaper used to live in our home.
Yeah, there's something fucky. Anyways, that is very odd though.
Yeah, so
there's like ghost activity and weird animal activity.
It's like poltergeist activity because they're moving stuff and hiding things from them. But that's not all. A few months after the Gormans moved onto the ranch, Ed brought the rest of his cattle. Ed was with one of his sons and with a visiting relative, too. I think it was a cousin of one of his kids.
Okay.
And they saw an RV in the distance. Just parked.
On their property?
On their property.
Okay, that's weird.
They immediately head out to confront the trespassers and see what they were doing on their private property. And when they were only about 200 yards from the vehicle, it started moving away from them. But it kept the same pace when they would speed up or slow down.
Huh.
Like it was not in a hurry. It was just trying to maintain the same constant distance from them. Right. So what stuck out as even more odd was that the front headlights of the vehicle and the rear brake lights were not bumping or swaying with the terrain.
Oh, so it was like a ghost RV.
The vehicle made no sound as if it didn't even have an engine. They started moving towards the vehicle more quickly now to make sure it would not break a fence or anything else on their land. It also increased its pace, keeping the same distance, and then they noticed the RV rise a few feet off the ground.
What?
It was hovering over the fence lines, forcing the Gormans to jump the fences while chasing down this RV.
So they got out of their car to chase a vehicle?
I don't think they were in a car at this point.
Oh, they were just walking.
They were near the home and saw the RV. And
okay.
Like, oh, let's just go talk to them.
Okay, I was picturing like a really boring car chase, but I get it. Got you.
So as they approached the property line, they were exhausted because it's 480 acres. So I don't know how far exactly they traveled in this chase. But
long enough.
Long enough, yes. So as they slowed, there was now no question whether the RV was or was not hovering in the air because it rose higher above the tree line at the edge of the ranch and flew out of sight. The trees were at least 50 feet high.
Are we talking like some redneck aliens or something?
I don't know. But
like they made a UFO over to what they found in a garbage dump?
Yeah, it looked exactly like an RV.
Okay, that's that's scary, but also pretty awesome.
So a few weeks pass, and again the same vehicle appears on their ranch. This time, Ed and Ellen were the ones who saw it. And this time, a crackling metallic sound was what alerted them to the presence of this hovering RV.
Okay.
They tried to chase down the vehicle again, and it did the same thing, kept a constant distance from them. As they were well away from their home, they heard this crackling sound again, and it was behind them this time. So they turn around to see if they could find the source of whatever is making this noise. Couldn't find it. So then they turned back to the RV again, but this time it's gone.
Okay.
No lights, sounds, or any sign of it have ever been there. They tried to forget about this, but since there was nothing they could do, let's just out of sight, out of mind. Like,
what are you going to tell people in the town that you're trying to escape small town gossip and you're running around town talking about wolves 3 times the size and weird ass flying RVs?
Right.
This is probably why they were gossiping about you in New Mexico.
So more time passes, and now the winter weather has set in.
And is Utah winter? What is that? Do you have any notion?
I mean, if you're comparing it to Minnesota weather, I imagine it's a little more mild, but they still get blizzards and stuff. They get plenty of snow.
Okay.
Because it's an elevated area, too.
Gotcha.
So one evening in the winter, Tom was tending to the cattle when he saw a new intruder. This time, a triangular ship hovered in the air 20 feet, very close to the home.
Whoa.
Tom noted that it looked like a smaller version of the F-117 stealth ships. So if you know what that is, it's like those triangle, like black U.S. military ships that before they started using drones regularly, they would fly these in because they're much quieter than a regular jet.
Okay.
So they would use that for like reconnaissance and stuff.
Sure.
But it looked almost exactly like that ship, but much smaller.
When you say ship, do you mean plane?
I'm calling it a ship because we're assuming this is a UFO.
Okay.
Sorry, but yes, like that aircraft.
Okay, so in his head, he's thinking like, why would a military aircraft be around my house?
Right, yeah, he's not, at least with this specific vehicle, he's not jumping to the conclusion that it's an alien.
Right.
He's thinking that, some military projects or whatever are happening on his private land.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, these, at least the real military ships, they're not silent, but they're very quiet compared to a regular jet.
Sure.
However, this vehicle was completely silent. It had multicolored lights blinking in a seemingly recurring pattern on the outside of the aircraft and onto the snow. It was slowly approaching his position, and Tom believed it hadn't actually spotted him yet, so he ducked for cover and tried to watch it pass. The aircraft seemed to be searching for something as it was continually sweeping the area. Tom could not keep still in the freezing snow for a long time, so he had to stretch out and move a little bit. And as soon as he did this, it alerted the ship, and it turned towards him. The lights turned off, and it was just facing him.
How high above him was this?
I think it was about 20 feet in the air. It was trying to search for something
really,
on the ground.
really low.
Right. Yeah.
Oh God, that's like War of the Worlds. Where they're hiding and they have to be really still, or the weird ass little alien robot eyes will find them. That's scary.
So the lights turned off, as I said, and it was facing him, but it just took a moment for it to just turn around and glide away. As soon as knew it was spotted, it was done with him and left.
All right.
So, as you suggested, he was thinking, is this like a secret government project, or is it just some rich person that has a lot of money and wants to have a ship like this, or a aircraft like this? He has no idea. He doesn't even consider aliens at this point.
I mean, I don't think most people would. I mean, you'd try to write it off.
I mean, and it looked like something he knew the U.S. military already had.
Sure.
So, a few more weeks pass, and Ellen sees something as she arrives home. She saw the same triangular aircraft hovering over the ranch, and she wanted nothing to do with this. So she was completely alone at this time. The entire family was out doing their own thing.
Okay.
So she just went directly home and pretended she didn't see anything.
Oh my God, that's totally my method. That's what happens when I'm home alone and someone knocks on the door.
Well, that's not the end of it. She heads into the home and tries to forget about what she saw. But when she opens the drapes of the window, she notices something outside about 200 yards away. It was the RV again, parked.
What?
She had no idea how it could have gotten there because, like we said, there's only one entrance to this property.
Yeah.
And there were no tire tracks in the snow when she was driving up.
Well, it flies, as we previously established.
Yes, so she just assumed it was doing that again. Now, it was parked, and she could actually see a brightly lit interior of the RV. What do you think's inside? Just guess. There's no way you're going to guess what she sees.
I'm honestly picturing just some weird, scraggly, redneck conspiracy theorist living in a floating RV, kind of like X-Files style.
Nope. It's just a desk. There's a random desk sitting in this RV. And it's just a desk for a few minutes. But then she sees someone walk up and sit down at the desk.
And the RV is on the ground like a normal RV right now.
At this point, yes.
It's lit up.
Well, the interior, like it's a window. And she can see into the window.
And just like a writing desk, like an office desk?
Yep, just like an office desk. Just
and someone like sits down in there.
Right, so like usually if you see into an RV, it's like a little table or...
Yeah, like a bed.
Right. It's just, it's like a blank room with a desk inside.
That's awesome.
So after a few minutes, a dark figure enters the visible area she could see and sits down at the desk.
That's horrifying.
Ellen assumes it was a man based on the build of the figure, and he was covered in all black and had some type of headgear on covering his face.
No. I'd run back to the house and I would call the police.
Well, it gets even weirder.
Oh, God. Okay.
He suddenly stands up and walks to the doorway of the RV and opens it. And a very bright light comes from behind him, like the light from the interior of the RV, kind of masking his front.
So he's like a shadow.
Yeah, or at least appears to be because of the lighting. She can now see his full figure and notices he's wearing knee-high boots. And if the doorway was the size of a normal RV door, she estimated that he had to be at least 7 feet tall. He was staring right at Ellen, which obviously freaked her out. She closes the curtains and did not look outside again. She calls her husband and she's like, you have to come back now. Come back.
Yep, that's what I would do. Except for I'd call the police first. No offense. You'd be like, dude, what do you want me to do about it?
Right. And it sounded like he was extremely far away on some sort of business, too. So he immediately leaves, but he doesn't get back till morning because that's how far away he is.
And she just hangs out alone in there till morning?
Yes.
Girl, get out.
So when he finally does get home, they search the area where the RV was, and they find boot prints in the snow. They're 18 inches long. Just a giant ass foot.
Whoa.
But what was weird about the footprint too is that it didn't have any ridges or bumps like a normal boot would leave in the snow. It was just completely smooth, except for the heel dug into the snow really deep. Like he stood at attention.
Oh, it's not like a high heel?
But no, just like a deep impression. Like he put all of his weight on his heels.
Okay.
So they decide at this point, nobody was allowed to go outside at dark anymore.
I mean... Okay, we've talked about this before. Why are people going outside after dark by themselves anyways?
They have to raise the cattle. So if something goes wrong with the cows or something, they have to
Valid point.
tend to it.
Yeah, livelihood. That makes sense.
So
buddy system.
These events that we've talked about so far, they're kind of like, I mean, there's a lot of things happening, but so far these were sporadic events.
Yeah, but fucking weird ones.
There's something that's happening much more regularly, though.
Okay.
Nearly every day, they would see things in the sky. It would be at all times of the day, mostly in the daytime, though, or at dusk.
Interesting.
It would be odd disturbances in the sky that looked like clouds of orange when you were viewing it from the outside of the property or the edges of the property. However, if you were close to the actual home of the property, they looked like windows in the sky.
Wait, okay, so we've got like weird ass animals. We've got potential aliens and UFOs, and now we've got like a weird force field around the ranch.
Not a force field. They're actually like windows viewing into basically what they don't know for sure what it was, because the odd thing about this was if it was like dusk and, you know, the sky is like a purpley orange, it would be perfect daytime in the window. So they don't know if they were looking at like a different time or if they were looking at just a different area completely.
And what? And so you look directly up and it's just a perfect square of something else.
I think it's more like a circular.
Okay, so it's just like a break in the clouds, and it looks like you're looking into somewhere else.
It's not a break in the clouds, it's a break in the sky. Like it's just like a cut through the sky.
I hate it. It's very Truman Show.
Right. So the odd thing, I mean, of course that's extremely odd, but the oddest thing about it is they can only see the window from that general area of the property. It's almost like it's masked when you're in any other area or if you're outside the property.
Masked by orange clouds.
Like, right. So it's like if you're looking at it head on, you can see it, but it's almost like it's an other dimensional object where if you're in a different area on our 3D plane, it's just not visible to you.
What? Okay.
And they hypothesize that the reason it appears as an orange cloud is because it might actually be a tunnel and the windows are the end of the tunnel.
All right, everyone, go back and listen to our Fourth Dimension episode about wormholes.
Right. And the reason that they think it's a tunnel is because occasionally in these windows, they would see that triangular ship fly out of it.
Oh, I hate that. I would have moved out a long time ago. That's actually horrifying. I mean, super interesting, but I don't like that my home is the location for an alien wormhole.
Yeah, and it's they have no idea why obviously it's happening to them or this area.
Yeah.
It just is.
I bet they're happy about them double locks now.
Well, it's not over yet. Winter's progressing, and during a really bad blizzard, one of their breeding cows got lost in the snow. Tom set out to find the cow so it would not get hurt or freeze to death.
Mm-hmm.
And after some searching, he found very fresh tracks, so he follows.
Okay.
And after some time following, the tracks seemed to lengthen, like the cow was starting to run, as if something was chasing the cow. And if you know anything about cows, which I'm sure you don't know too much about cows.
I know almost nothing about cows.
It takes a lot to make a cow run.
Really? I mean, I would imagine if you see a wolf, it would. If
it sees danger, obviously it will, but it's not like they run for fun.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Especially like breeding cows. And bulls are a little bit different, but cows don't really run.
Sure. I guess to me, it's just you're in a ranch and you've seen wolves. It wouldn't be too surprising to me that a cow would run away. So
he's following now running tracks, which leads to a clearing in the forest with no cover. Just a little area that has no trees.
Sure.
About 50 yards into the clearing, the tracks just stop. The final 4 tracks were in the snow and still showed that the cow was running at its full speed, but there were no further tracks or any sign of this cow.
Oh my God, is this like the UFO tractor beam of the cow?
It's like something just lifted it away. Tom never found the cow, and this actually was the first of 5 similar disappearances of cattle throughout the rest of the winter.
What do they want with our cows?
You'll see. Because spring finally comes, and it's April of 1995.
Okay.
Tom and his son Tad were tracking cattle on horseback. Tad was chasing down a cow and her recently born calf. It was raining, and the cow slipped on this muddy area we were talking about earlier on the property.
Okay.
It goes down an embankment, and it's unable to climb back up. Meanwhile, the calf continues to run away. So Tad chases after the calf, planning on returning to help the cow out later.
Sure.
After about 20 minutes, Tad finally is able to wrangle the calf and bring the calf back to the mother.
Mm-hmm.
When he returned to the cow, he found her dead. But she was not simply dead.
She had just fallen
Yeah,
down.
There was no injury.
She would have just been stuck.
She would have been stuck, yes.
Okay.
Her entire rear end had been cut off with surgical precision.
Huh.
Its internal organs were sucked out. And I say sucked out because there was no trace of blood anywhere.
So it's just like a half cow shell?
Pretty much, yeah. Just the skin and bones were there and like its hair, but no organs inside. This all happened in 20 minutes, maybe even less than 20 minutes.
And there's no blood.
No sign of blood anywhere, and this was raining still, so there was a slight, maybe inch deep, just a little bit of water at this bottom of the canal. No blood in the water either. So whatever did this, it's like it had some sort of like instrument where it was making a clean cut and immediately sucking out everything in the cow. Over the next year, this was the first of many cattle mutilations. The rear end of these cows were always cut off and the reproductive organs would always be missing. Whatever was happening on the ranch, it was now affecting their livelihood too.
Yeah. That's the weirdest part of the cow to take, if you ask.
The reproductive organs, yeah. But okay, so we've had a lot happen so far. We've had skinwalkers or wolf creatures. We've had UFOs, poltergeist activity, portals in the sky. What else could there be?
Well, now we got hollow cows missing their
Right,
utes.
and we have cattle mutilations too.
Yeah.
What's left but orbs?
Ooh.
So in the early summer of 1995, Tom and Ellen were outside in the evening before calling it a day. The animals seemed restless, and they soon found out that it was because a bright blue ball of light was flying around the heads of the horses.
Interesting.
This was not the first time they've actually seen orbs on their property, but this is the first time that the orb actually interacted with anything.
Yeah. I mean, of all the things they've seen, a random orb, I'd be like, pfft.
Right.
But if this is like interacting with the cows, like flying, or the horses.
Right. It's interacting with the animals, yes.
Right.
And all of a sudden, with unnatural speed, the ball of blue light actually darts away from the horses and towards the Gorman home. It stops right in front of Tom and Ellen, and this is the first time that it interacted with them directly as well. It was about twice the size of a baseball, with a clear glass-like shell, and inside the shell was a swirling mass of blue liquid that gave off intense light. It made sounds like crackling electricity.
Like the sound of the RV.
They called that a crackling sound, but the earlier sound was more like crackling metal, like things maybe kind of crunching on metal or just metal clanging.
Sure.
But this is like actual like static electricity, but louder.
Okay.
After their initial feeling of awe that this thing actually came up to them, both Tom and Ellen were suddenly overcome with the most intense fear they have ever felt. Tom was actually on record saying this is the most scared he has ever been, and he's been in situations as a cattle rancher where his life was threatened by a berserk animal.
Sure.
He's never felt like this before, and he said he felt like he was losing control of his mind and body and almost had a seizure. But that was until Ellen unconsciously turned on her flashlight, and the light freaked out this orb, and it darted back into the trees.
Now, we've talked about something that made somebody feel irrationally scared. And I can't remember which topic that was.
I can't
But
either.
it was just like the most intense fear they've ever felt.
Right.
For no reason. It was the Hopkinsville Goblins. It was when one of them was like in their bedroom and the Hopkinsville Goblins were like looking in their window, and she felt just like a massive intense fear.
Right.
Aliens.
Right. And I do want to say, even though it is an orb, this is definitely not a ghost orb. This seems like it's almost like an alien's version of a drone. Like it's doing like a stealth mission or just like a reconnaissance mission.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to our Ghost Orbs episode, those sorts of orbs are just balls of light.
Right.
I mean, if you're able to describe this as a glass shell with
and
blue
making
liquid.
like sound
that's
inside
different.
too. Yeah, it's like some sort of.
I wouldn't call it an orb so much as some sort of weird.
But it was perfectly round, so I guess it is.
Yes, okay, but, technically an orb.
Right. So, like I said, it just goes back into the woods when she turns on her flashlight. They went back inside their home to recover from this because they felt sick.
Right.
And a couple hours passed and they were getting ready for bed, but then the orb returns and it starts circling their house. What's weird about this is as it would pass each room of the house, the light bulbs in that room would dim until it passes the room, then they would go back to full strength.
Fucking weird.
So it's like it's sucking energy out of an immediate area, and it does this until dawn.
That's horrifying. This is some X-Files shit.
There's way too much happening here, and this is just the first 2 years. So much happens. But anyway, the events that have been happening so far would probably make most people leave and never come back.
I mean, I would have left after the first RV sighting.
Right. But this, it's different for them because they've invested too much into this property and this is their livelihood.
Yeah.
It would be catastrophic to their situation to leave.
Yeah. It makes sense.
But 2 more events happen that end up being the final straw for the Gormans. They were putting up with the UFOs, the wolf creatures, the orbs, the poltergeist activity, the windows, everything. All of this stuff is happening. But in the summer of 1996, so this is almost 2 years now after they've moved in.
Right.
Enough time has passed for rumors of the odd events that are happening to them to spread around the community. And then even beyond that, stories were trickling out of state. The family greatly valued their privacy and they were not happy when a truck came driving up their ranch unannounced. And inside this truck was a 6'2" burly man with long blonde hair. He had heard of the paranormal activity on the ranch, and he pleaded with Tom to allow him to meditate on the property.
Okay.
This was the first of any kind of this type of visitor they've ever gotten, and they didn't even know how to react, so they're like, okay, I guess.
What?
So Tom lets him, but he doesn't leave him alone. He just accompanies him until he finds an area that is to his liking.
Wow. Okay. These people are very accommodating because I would have been like, get out of my yard.
So Tom and his son Tad come with, and this man finds an area in a clearing that is perfect for him, and he starts meditating. And Tom and Tad watch with amusement as this weird man is sitting on the ground with his eyes closed and his hands out in like a prayer-like motion. Then they heard a chime that sounded like a cowbell, but they never put any cowbells on any of their cattle.
Okay.
It was coming out of the woods, and it would chime again and again, and with every chime, it sounded like it was coming closer. The blonde man seemed to either not have noticed or he didn't care because maybe he assumed it was their cattle. Yeah. Then, without warning, something shot out of the tree towards the man. It was fast, and it was camouflaged. It had a haze around it, almost like heat distortion that you see on the highway pavement in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
That was completely surrounding this thing. And it almost looked pixelated, they said. It comes right up to the man that's meditating and stops inches from his face and lets out a roar that's halfway between a lion and a bear.
Wait. I'm having trouble picturing this. It's a thing that shoots out of the tree. Like, are we to assume it's an animal of some kind?
No idea.
It's just pixels?
It's like hazy, misty pixels.
Okay.
And it's just threatening this guy. And he immediately gets out of his trance and jumps back and like falls on his ass. And he is in hysterics. And then the thing, the creature, the monster, whatever it is, goes back into the forest.
Okay, so this is the first time we've had a third party see this.
Yes.
Now, just to rewind a little bit, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, but if this is such a private family, how are these stories getting out among the community? Other than like the weird wolf thing when they went to go ask around.
Right. I imagine it was at some point when members of the family are in town, maybe they'll ask something like, hey, have you seen like an RV around the area. There was an RV parked on our property. Maybe they're asking just general questions like that, but then what's actually happening maybe slips out or something. I don't know.
Sure. Okay.
So this man freaked out, begs Tom and Tad to bring him back to his vehicle, and they have to like carry him back. This giant 6'2" burly dude.
Dude, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Like, why are you driving to a stranger's house anyway?
So then he leaves. He's had enough. And then on an evening shortly later, I think this is just a few days later, Tom was with his 3 dogs on the ranch. And on the far end of the pasture, he sees that the blue orb has returned. Tom immediately feels that same sense of dread he felt before. Without thinking, he lets the dogs loose because they were barking at this orb.
Sure.
They immediately run at this orb, and they would jump at it, trying to bite it. The orb would fly lower, like it was toying with them, and then would fly out of reach at the last second. And then it was obvious that the orb was leading the dogs towards the forest, and it was too late before Tom realized what was actually happening. And then the orb had entered the forest, and Tom heard the sounds of the dogs yelping in pain, and then silence.
And then was this like the cow situation? Like there were tracks and then gone?
Well, he didn't mention anything about tracks, because what actually happens next is he felt sick again after encountering the orb. So he could, and he was by himself too, so he did not feel safe going in after the dogs now. He decides to wait till morning.
All right, smart.
He finds that the bodies of the dogs are not in the forest. And when he enters a clearing of trees, he finds 3 giant large circles of brown dead grass. And at the center of each circle is a greasy pile of blackened ash.
What? That sounds like something like a weird sci-fi novel.
It's like it had like a plasma ray or something and just vaporized the dogs.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So his dogs being killed and the weird man getting threatened by an invisible force were the final straws for him, because they were being actually threatened now. Obviously the cattle were being killed already too, but
that's
something that actually happens very often in the area too, the cattle mutilations. So that was not unheard of either.
Sure. I mean, if you think of the chupacabra just as a myth, that happens to livestock all over the world.
Right. But especially this area of like the Southwest and Western portions of America.
Sure.
And especially around this time in the 90s too. This was happening regularly in many states.
Bizarre, but
very bizarre. No one knows why it happens, but it was not unheard of. So he was like, I guess it's just something that comes with the job, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna lose cattle,
right,
in weird way, or just that's part of the job. Yeah,
but having his dogs killed and then also a thing almost murder a stranger,
right?
Those were the final straws. So
the blue orb, like invading your personal space wouldn't.
It didn't hurt them though.
Okay.
Either way, Tom gathers the rest of the family that same day that he finds the bodies of the dogs, or what's left of them. They finally decide that this was enough, and they decide to put up the property for sale. And by the end of the year, they're out of there. Skinwalker Ranch was purchased by wealthy businessman and paranormal enthusiast Robert Bigelow. And this is when the National Institute for Discovery Science begins their investigation. And that's where we're going to pick up next week.
Okay, wait. One last question. I am assuming that it was not called Skinwalker Ranch when they purchased the property.
No. It was called Skinwalker Ranch after the Gormans moved there, and stories got out, and then after this investigation takes place.
Okay, so it was called Skinwalker Ranch while they were living on the property.
I don't know if it was actually called Skinwalker Ranch, but stories of their encounters with the wolves, they got out. And that's what led Robert Bigelow to want to purchase the property.
Okay.
The thing is, it's an odd name because skinwalkers seem like a very minor part of the story.
Yes.
I do want to say, too, there was so much else I wanted to cover in this episode, but there was just too much, and our length of show we do wouldn't allow it. But there's like stuff about like Freemasons involved, too.
What? You skipped over the Freemason shit?
It wasn't relevant to the Gormans. That's why I left it out. But okay. Do you know the Buffalo? I think they're called the Buffalo Soldiers. They were like
them, yes.
Yeah, they were like all black infantrymen from the 1800s, and they took part in the Civil War and a lot of the wars against various Native American tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them were actually Freemasons. And they actually settled in this area in the 1800s when they were going to war with the Utes. I believe it was the Utes. And their graves were actually very close to the property before buildings were built on top of them. So it's like the opposite of Poltergeist, the movie, where you built something on an Indian burial ground. It was actually the Indians that built on the graves of black men.
Well,
but regardless, it was kind of irrelevant to the story, but I just thought it was very interesting.
There's a lot going on. I mean, even just like pieces from episodes of completely unrelated topics that we've done. I mean, you got ghosts, you got poltergeists, you got like cryptids, but then you have aliens and clear UFOs. And why not throw a conspiracy theory in there with some Freemasons? I'm invested.
I mean, yeah, and the thing is, there's not a whole lot to that point about the Freemasonry, except that not on the ranch itself, but on a lot of the cliffs in the area, there would be Masonic symbols just painted onto random cliffs.
Fucking weird.
Like, yeah, very weird stuff. But next week, we're going to pick up and finish the story, hopefully.
Okay, but here's the thing. Aren't the Masons kind of like somehow tied to the Men in Black, which are tied to alien activity?
I have no knowledge of them being tied.
Really?
Freemasons and Men in Black? No.
Well, Freemasons is like a government conspiracy type hiding things, and then the Men in Black coming to cover things up.
I guess you could put it that way. I mean, they have related. Yeah, peripherally related, but I don't think directly linked.
No. But okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Turns out ghosts are aliens. Just gonna call it all aliens.
Well, next week we're going to be talking about George Knapp and Colm Kelleher's experience along with the rest of the NIDS team, which is the National Institute for Discovery Science. And I hope you liked it, everyone. The story's nuts, and we're not even done yet.
Well, just as a palate cleanser. Yeah. I've got this week's bizarre news.
Cool.
Spooky news. It's not nearly as cool as Skinwalker Ranch, but it's very real. So last year, 2020, worst year on Earth. I mean, debatably.
The plague, maybe.
Right.
Like the actual plague.
We had murder hornets. We had pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't there some other weird, like, deadly animal that was discovered?
The radioactive boars?
Yes, there were the radioactive boars. We got everything. Well, this year, it's a little more mundane, but a little more horrifying. Because there have been chipmunks with the plague located in Southern California.
When you say the plague, do you mean the black plague?
The black plague. Certain sections of the south shores of California's Lake Tahoe have been closed because chipmunks have tested positive for the infectious disease.
Jeez.
The bacterium that causes the plague is naturally occurring in parts of California. The plague, if y'all don't remember, caused the Black Death in Europe in the 1300s that killed tens of millions of people, and it's an incredibly infectious bacterial illness. Lots of people attribute rats to having spread it.
The fleas on the rats.
Right. Yes. Well, it's the bacteria.
Right.
Is what
that was on the fleas. Yeah. Also, apparently hamsters and gerbils too.
Yeah, dude. Rodents they're not pets. They're plague-riddled disease carriers.
And you said tens of millions of deaths, too, but there's actually recent historians that have estimated that number is way lower than the actual total death count from the plague. And they estimate it to be like at least 3 times as much as whatever number it was, like 50 million or something.
I mean, it killed at least a third of Europe.
Yeah, they're actually thinking it was closer to half.
Yikes. Well, that's not the only. I mean, that's spooky enough, but that's not the only weird animal related like plague going on in the United States right now. Because in Virginia, people have been reporting like mysterious bug bites that aren't mosquitoes. And they have no idea what's been biting them. They're like huge blistering bug bites. And they like get super swollen. Doctors don't know what it is. It's unlike anything they've ever seen before. Health departments can't figure out what it is. They're guessing it's some sort of like mite. But I'm guessing vampires.
I think it might be mites.
So, yeah, sorry, today's spooky news isn't that spooky, but, like, you know, the real world is spooky.
There's enough going on, and honestly, I feel like we are in the end times with all of this stuff
Yeah,
happening.
we got boils, we got the Black Plague, we got a worldwide pandemic.
Ragnarok is happening, and it is upon us.
So just be spooked to be alive.
You'll just think about skinwalkers and aliens and stuff, and we'll do that again next week. And if you have a story to send us, whether it's a personal experience or if it's something you find that you want us to talk about, send it our way. You can send it to Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. All are at NerdSlothHQ.
Or you can email us at podcast@nerdsloth.com. If you put A Lil Spooky in the subject line, we will definitely read it and get back to you.
And we'll catch you next week.
Yep. Hope your teeth stay strong and healthy and in your mouth, both in real life and in the dream world.
All right. See you next week. Bye, y'all.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Presented by NerdSloth,
a place for lazy nerds.
If you like what you heard, consider donating at patreon.com/nerdsloth so we can continue bringing you quality shows. Be sure to also leave us a review and share your favorite episodes and clips on social media. If you're looking for more content, visit us at nerdsloth.com.